Hello, everyone, and welcome for joining the Fully Managed podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Laura, for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So we're going to start today with a game. I like to say it gets our creative juices flowing. It's outside of the agency realm, so it's maybe something more fun. You don't have to think about your work for the rest of the day right now for this 2 minutes. But okay, so this game is called Guilty Pleasure. So what you're going to tell me about is your current guilty pleasure, or maybe a long-standing guilty pleasure for try to convince me for it to be my guilty pleasure within a minute, if that's okay.
Okay, let me think. Okay, should I start?
Yes, ready, go.
Okay, I have a feeling many people have this guilty pleasure, but searching social media for animal videos, specifically animal videos of them being either reunited with each other or with their owners, it's like a huge, probably dopamine boost. And I just, if I'm feeling low, it's really wonderful. And it's just like, there's nothing questionable about it. Maybe it's not even guilty.
Yeah, I feel like no one would judge you for watching animal reunited videos.
Yeah, okay. I need to think harder about something that I should feel a little more shame around.
I mean, maybe doing it for hours or whatever amount of time it may be.
Yeah.
Guilty, so to speak.
I think, okay. When you can, sleeping late on a work day. If you need sleep, sleep in. I feel pretty strongly about how we're all a bit underslept and underrested. And I would say if I'm in a busy time and I sleep in, I do feel a little guilty about it. But ultimately, I would argue that if you need to sleep and anyone can sleep in, you should definitely do that because it helps you. It helps everyone around us to all get a little bit of breathing room in this oversaturated world that we're navigating.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to convince me of that one. That one is I certainly never get enough sleep, so I think that would feel wonderful if I knew that I was able to do that. So I agree. I think also if you don't get enough sleep, you might not be as productive, and like that's what people's goal, I guess, is. If so I think that if you're getting a little more sleep and you're going to be more productive that day, then I feel like what's the harm? You might, if you don't get that sleep, you might be maybe not as productive, and then it like taking that little bit of time to sleep more may actually make a big difference.
Yeah, it can have all kinds of good effects, whether it's around like direct productivity or just creating space to show up in the world in ways that are more authentic or more direct, being able to take more risks, speak up, or it can, getting rested.
Yeah. It can also probably your emotional state might be a little better. You might not be so quick to snap at someone if you're upset at something they did, or I don't know. I think more sleep would benefit the entirety of the professional world.
Absolutely.
Maybe if they even changed the I love battling, or I love pushing against the 9 to 5 like set ways, because I just don't think that makes any sense anymore. I think that people are more productive at different times. So I so much agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with like we have a distributed team at Modality, and I like really encourage people to just work when it works for them. I'm definitely not holding people to a 9 to 5 schedule because I'm not even holding myself to that. Yeah,
exactly. I think it makes the most sense for if you trust your team and know that they will get their tasks done in, maybe it's just not at the same time as like the normal, then I think that's okay, because I think that when people have the ability to do their work in a time that makes it best for them, I think you're going to get like their best quality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I 100% agree with that model.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us again today. If you don't know, this is the Fully Managed podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's partnership coordinator, and I'm joined here today with Laura, CEO and founder of Modality. Thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
So could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Kind of like maybe your journey up to founding Modality, what you're doing now currently, anything that's like on top of your mind, and anything that you think would be relevant to share with.
Sure. Yeah. I would say I have a sort of non-traditional path toward entrepreneurship. I don't know if there is like a traditional one. There might be, but so I grew up in Connecticut, in a family that was pretty academic family, a family that like was very much about research and science and like solid research methods. And I was really encouraged to be a scientist, like excelled at math and science, but I always loved art and majored in art, actually worked as a professional artist for the first part of my career, while always having one foot in public health and research. So I've always had this kind of interdisciplinary commitment and drive to, in my case, like find my own wellness and mental health solutions through art, through building queer community, through social justice work, like through all of these different kinds of modalities that are outside of traditional westernized medicalized therapy. That being said, that's also really helpful. It's like part of the mix. So my career, one way that I can look at it is a lens through like trying to make positive change in mental health systems through a lot of different angles, whether it's art, whether it's research, whether it's getting involved in social justice work. And founding Modality is really my latest effort. And immediately before founding Modality, I was working at a research unit here where I live in Boston, called the Disparities Research Unit, that was training community health workers to deliver what we call evidence-based interventions, like that have been proven effective and useful. And the impact that we were having was so incredible. And it was the middle of the pandemic and I had just left social work school, and compared even to the training I was getting in social work school, it was amazing. And so we were giving care in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, getting really excellent training for giving care across cultural difference. And at the same time, it is research. And when I saw the obstacles that they were facing and scaling, that's when I really thought, wow, there's a lot of opportunity to leverage technology to help these amazing efforts scale. So I really left and founded Modality to build tools that meet the standards of quality and safety that my former boss have and other amazing researchers who've been doing what's called implementation science research for decades. So yeah, really just trying to build tools to help people who are already really invested in scaling the mental health workforce achieve their goals.
This is wonderful. So, well, I have a bunch of questions. Some of them may be slightly personal questions out of curiosity, but like okay. So one, I think this is like a beautiful combination of like your skills and what you were interested in, which is like so wonderful because I feel like a lot of people don't fall into like a field in which like it encompasses everything that they kind of like. So that's just a comment. But then I was wondering, was there like pushback from your parents to like going into like an art driven field when they're like very science based background?
Yeah, well, each of my parents are quite different. I think so. My dad is a mathematician, and I would say he's like the most artist-like mathematician possible. So he's always like just in the world of ideas in his head. So it was pretty intuitive to him. My mother, I think she's an incredibly pragmatic person, so that was on her mind. But also, I think we had a conversation about it once. She was like, I tried to offer you like every option possible, and you just always wanted to do art. And yeah, we could have like a whole hour-long conversation about my art. Actually, I blurred my background, but that's actually like my art in the background.
Oh, that's beautiful. You didn't have to do that. I have my art that way.
So yeah, I would say I really have been doing both too. So I like out of college, I was working in a research unit while living in New York, starting my art career. So I I've been trying to do both a lot. And in terms of pushback, I think I've been lucky. I've had pretty supportive family environments. It's a family of like, if it doesn't exist, build it, or if you can do anything kind of messaging, which I hope that I can impart that on other people, because it's really important when you're taking risks to have people who are like, yeah, this risk makes sense to do.
No, that is really wonderful to have someone or have people that are supportive of something that you're trying to do, especially if it's new, because a lot of people are like, maybe you should play it safe and not try anything new, or, not try to break the mold. And I think that, if everyone that tried to break the mold was told that, then they wouldn't be the successful people that they are now. We wouldn't have such amazing tools and services and products that we do now. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think those well-intentioned but worried messages can really get under our skin.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it some of it is probably like realistic, I guess, because of course breaking the mold is not easy. But I think that there are so many people that are so capable of being able to do that. It's just a lot of hard work, and I don't know, maybe it's like it's discouraging that it might take time to be able to do something like that. But encouragement, I definitely think, always helps. Someone that believes in you is very important for this cycle sometimes.
Yeah, I would say it's crucial. Yeah.
So was art therapy one, how did you get into that? Was that just like naturally through doing art? And then how did it kind of transition into what you do now? Like, what was that kind of like? Was it just because you were always in both spaces and you're like, this makes perfect sense? Or what was like that process?
Well, it's interesting that you say art therapy, because it's growing up, that was always what people said, like, oh, you like art and you're interested in mental health, you should do art therapy. But I've actually like kept them very separate in a way. I won't go into like one of the early directions that modality took, but there was a time when we were investing in like supporting individual practitioners who had like a variety of different like definitions of what their modalities are. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I answer your question though. So could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. I was wondering what the process looked like. Well, one, how did you get into art? I might be generalizing with the term art therapy, but what you discussed where art can help you therapeutically, I suppose. And then did that process look like getting into what you're doing today?
Got it. Yeah. So I always, growing up, like I always did a ton of art, and I considered it totally separate from therapy. Like it was just something I did. And it's only in retrospect that I connect it with my mental health. Like I even wrote my college application essay about drawing, not realizing, now looking back on it, having gone into like big, like studying meditation and Buddhism, that I was actually writing about discovering meditation through drawing, but I didn't have that awareness while I was doing it. So now it's only in being in the world of mental health and research and showing like evidence bases for this and that I have the language and use that. When I'm in it, even today as an artist, I keep the goal of it, or like some like therapeutic result of it, really separate. But again, like we could have a whole conversation about art and like how important uselessness is to like have nonlinear everything. But when it comes to mental health, I think being an artist is really informing being an entrepreneur and how I'm a founder, because there's so much in common being an artist and being a founder. Some of the things off the top of my head are like having no roadmap. Like there's no prescribed way to be an artist. It's actually like the most structured path I've ever been on, like being an entrepreneur, even though there's like so much unknown and it's a roller coaster. You're also building something from scratch. You have to pay really close attention to like how people interact with what you're doing. So I think being in a relationship with my customers and even sales has really benefited from me being an artist, because, no one owes your attention. No one owes me attention for my art. So it's like I get really interested in paying attention to how people are paying attention and what people care about. So yeah, I would say those, and also being an artist, I think fundamentally you are just like, you have an imagination of something, that a way the world can be. And that's what drives making art. And at its core, I hope that's what would drive a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like having a vision for something that could be in the world that doesn't exist yet.
I think that is, I would hope at least that is the vision for a lot of entrepreneurs, and like that they don't fall into it, because that would be really interesting to find out. Actually, I'd love to do a study on someone that fell into entrepreneurship.
Just want to make money. And
yeah, that's also true. There are those people. Yeah. They totally exist. But so was it like an adjustment, or were there any difficulties surrounding coming into the healthcare field? Because even having like a background in science, for specifically like therapeutic avenues or like psychiatric avenues, was that something that was an adjustment? Did you have to learn a lot in the process of like involving yourselves with like the paraprofessionals, and so to speak?
Well, having worked as a community health worker is really valuable. Like I've gone through and received the training and given some of the care that we're trying to enable and facilitate. So that was great. Coming from a strong research background, it's definitely a shift into engaging with a different side of healthcare that's more like the financial sales cycle side of things, deciding how we interface with health plans and payers. That's all something that work that's like grant funded research doesn't have to intersect with. In a lot of cases, it's great when it does, because it makes it more possible to like translate research into the real world. But I would say, the commercial side of our healthcare systems in this country and in other countries, I would say is the biggest learning curve for me. Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing that you've learned since getting involved in this? Or several things, if you can't think of like,
I think relationships really matter. Like in everything, relationships really matter, and building trust with people. Like at the core of organizations is always people, and also that with modality specifically, and I think a lot of healthcare companies and organizations, there's so many complex systems that are intersecting that there isn't one person who knows everything thoroughly. For example, we're selling into like Medicaid providers and Medicaid, and people joke that like the more you know about Medicaid, the more confusing it is. Like it's just incredibly complex. And so finding partners to be navigating that complexity with is the goal, and to learn as much as I can, but to not get hung up on not knowing like what an acronym stands for, or, not being an expert on like Michigan's Medicaid, while I'm working in a different state. So it's like this confidence and like learning, and that no one expects everyone to understand everything. Because for example, like someone who knows Medicaid like doesn't necessarily know mental health, like clinical knowledge doesn't necessarily know technical things. So there's these really, it's great to find people who are working at the intersections of these like complex fields.
Yeah, it must be really nice to be able to learn while also kind of like building relationships and networks, because I think that it's really nice to be able to like admit that you can't know everything. I think that there are people that will never admit that, and I think that
yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's lovely to be able to like, I think that's the beauty of a partnership, is the idea of like collaborating with someone that knows something different than you do or does something different than you do. And I think that for creating something that's supposed to be helping people, which I guess not all businesses are doing in the same way that you are, but I think that there's like something really beautiful about that, like a bunch of people working together that have like separate goals but kind of maybe the same end goal, working together to learn from each other, to be able to create something that does work and does work for the people that you're trying to help.
Yeah, it's one of the most inspiring parts of my job. I really love it, and I kind of see it as my job. maybe other startups with different missions don't need to have such like a translational role, but I really love bringing together the technologists with the domain experts, with people who really understand sales cycles, and get to be at this intersection of like making this translation happen. That at the end of the day, I hope it's just a very intuitive user experience, but behind it is a lot of like pretty interesting conversations and translations of ideas.
Yeah, you also discuss modalities like removing barriers in order to help people. What are the difficulties that you face with like maybe the workers that you're working with, or like starting their practice, or whatever elements in which you're involved in? Like what do you think are like the most difficult parts of that?
Yeah, I would be happy to speak to that. So the sort of end users that Modality is building for right now are clinical trainers and supervisors, and the personnel that they're training. And this workforce is the variety of different kinds of non-licensed personnel. So I think community health workers, peer support specialists are really important in recovery and other kinds of care. Wellness coaches, there's care navigators, like case managers, intake specialists, like call center respondents. Like there's this huge number of people who have touch points with people who are looking for care, who would benefit from being trained in evidence-based mental health clinical skills. So the problem with the workforce is that it's really under-resourced. And so while Modality can't solve the problem of like low pay, we can build efficiency tools that help the workforce get high quality training at scale. So what we're doing is leveraging large language models to create really customizable simulations of conversations that provide really high quality on-demand feedback to the trainers and eventually to the personnel themselves to really supercharge the ability for the workforce to get trained in these really important evidence-based practices that can really help people engage in preventative medical care or engage in their medical care, and overall, like at the end of the day, improve patient outcomes and lower total cost of care if people are engaged in their healthcare more thoroughly. So the way that we're helping people, like our tools aren't patient facing, but there's like a huge workforce of people that are really passionate about leveraging lived experience to help their communities. And so those are like, that's the populations and the people that I'm really passionate about supporting.
That is wonderful. I actually just had a conversation the other day about AI being incorporated into like the healthcare field, specifically for, I think what you're talking about, and maybe I'm not as well versed, so I could be completely off base with if these are related.
I mean, everyone's new to this. It's all very very
but, so, well, okay, actually, maybe a better question, so I don't just talk about something I might not understand. Do you use AI-powered tools like for maybe onboarding or for any other kind of steps of this process that are like helpful? Because I personally may have been like an AI pessimist a little bit for a while, and I've only through having a lot of these podcasts, I've kind of been introduced to like a lot of the good that it is capable of doing, which is very nice and it made me a little hopeful. But I'm wondering, is there any ways in which like this helps you throughout this process?
Like using AI in our workflows?
Yes. Or okay. Maybe the entirety of what you do instead of maybe just not workflows. I don't.
Yeah. I think I can speak to how it's affecting our like technical team building the product. It's like really empowering for engineers. I'm not doing the engineering myself, so I can't speak to all the specifics, but I have two sort of advisors who are mentoring a couple engineers whose capacity to build these tools is like really exponentially larger with AI tools. So I think, and this isn't, I'm speaking to something that's not my area of expertise, but it is like an impact that I'm experiencing, like a really positive impact in what we can accomplish with a very small team, building Modality's tools. And then just being able to offer this next generation training, it's like really an order of magnitude or like a step beyond what's possible with, you know, like video modules and like online quizzes. So I think it has like huge like access to information and pedagogical potential. Like it has potential to be like a big equalizer in terms of access to training and education.
Yeah, I do think that it's something that's incredibly helpful. I was talking to the previous guest that this was brought up with about how incorporating it into when a patient may like talk to a healthcare provider about like symptoms or something that they're experiencing, like having AI be able to like search for these things is something that would be like incredibly useful, especially for time, because there are so many healthcare providers that are very much overloaded with patients. There are not enough out there. They're not getting paid well enough, whatever it may be. And so I just thought that was something that was so interesting that I'd never really thought of, about like that. It's also, people get misdiagnosed all the time because of a person just being human, like a doctor just being human, and the idea that, you know, like they can use their best judgment, but they might still be wrong. And that's not because they didn't have enough schooling or they're ignorant or whatever it may be. It's just like sometimes there's so many symptoms that are similar to different things. And so I was hearing about it like that, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I didn't realize that it could be incorporated into the medical field at all. Like I just didn't, I know that I was just thinking like robots, I guess, like the normal person.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also kind of like an AI pessimist too. Like I'm on team human. But what you're saying is like, it's a different application, like diagnosis, but the same kind of mentality that modality has, which is like really empowering humans to do their best work and to connect with other humans as best as possible, to support other humans. So there's modalities tools are really designed to help like expand the capacity of the humans who are giving care and training each other. There's other mental health companies that are like really invested in like, you know, placing their bets on like AI therapists. That's just a different product than what we're building.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't know about...
It's happening whether we want to or not. Like I had a friend who just, I don't know, in between therapy sessions, she was like, I was feeling anxious, so I just talked to ChatGPT. So I mean, it's interesting like what's happening, whether we're regulating it or not. It's interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I think it's also like a lot of people don't like therapy for the way of like people have personal biases. Like technically, obviously, as a therapist, I don't think you're really supposed to give your opinion, but I feel like it kind of happens in a way anyway. Or at least I've experienced it.
Yeah.
So I think that with like having something that's more objective might be helpful in a way. Or maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but it's just like removing bias in AI is like a really big issue too, because it's not inherently unbiased, it's actually inherently biased. So I was just having a conversation with a research partner about this center that she's building at Stanford, and like to try to build like a bank of simulations that have been like trained by people with lived experience. So yeah, the bias in AI is really real, but also the bias in humans. And one of the reasons that I'm passionate about empowering the non-licensed workforce or like multidisciplinary personnel is that there is a lower barrier. Like all of the systems of oppression that are like systemic racism and homophobia, transphobia, everything like affect who enters the clinical workforce as well. And there's just like a lower barriers to keep people out when you don't have to be licensed. So it's like also empowering more diverse people to be entering the workforce and have contact with people to support, you know, people with to support people to support their own communities more.
Yeah,
basically like there's a lot of like white female clinicians out there that are, it's great, but like we need more diversity.
100%. There are so many barriers that are in the way of so many positions that people can get in the workforce. And I think that's we don't have to get into the political world, but I think we're in on the same train of what we believe in for that, of the idea that empowering people with educational tools is the best possible thing that I think we can do for diversity in the workforce, something that is so unbelievably important for people to be met with understanding by someone that represents them, is so, I think even like the average woman, I would say like many women that I've talked to do not even want a male gynecologist. Like no matter what the like who they are, just because of the idea that like that doesn't represent them, like it doesn't make sense. Like, and that's just generic, but there's so many other facets that affect the medical field or the healthcare field that are not thought of, and it's sometimes very difficult for people to be able to get through to getting to a certain position because of their background or whatever it may be, or what they look like. And that's not how it should be. So to be able to provide training like how you do is absolutely wonderful. Before we end, I actually wanted to ask, because I didn't ask yet, what does the training look like? I know maybe you don't want to give away like your secret sauce, but like I'd love to know like what kind of systems are put into place, like what that looks like, because it's just very interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So what we do is like we're an infrastructure layer tool. So say an organization has their training where they do what we call like initial didactic training, or kind of like download a lot of information. And then before people see real other humans to give care to, you generally have a phase of practicing with like pilot patients or pilot conversations. And often that's like you need to schedule with someone like a friend or like just another human to practice with, and then another human has to go through and like score all of that. So what we're doing is automating a lot of that stage of things and creating AI like AI simulations for people to have these practice conversations with, to build the skills and basically get more reps. And it's also like can be a lower stakes environment to take risks and make mistakes. Like say, like for example, if I'm in my old job, like I got really good training around working with someone who's like an older Black woman. But if I am preparing to do that and I don't know if something is going to come across well or not, or I just have questions, like I can practice with AI in a low stakes environment. Like that's just one example, but there's so many different kinds of skills that we need practice with in conversation to use effectively when we're seeing real people. So it's like it's that slice of the training is where we're building tools for people to get a lot of practice.
That is really cool. I think that it's like so I appreciate exactly what you said about like the low stakes, because I think that is definitely something that like might even deter people from going into the field in the first place, of like obviously people learn from their mistakes and that's really important, but to do it in a place where like you're not blatantly offending someone that is a real person is really nice to get that training and learn from that. Because I think it's even, someone gave me the example of like using ChatGPT to filter how they say things, because sometimes they can come off like rude to their employees through chat, and so they'll put what they say through ChatGPT to like filter what they're saying. And it kind of reminds me of this, because it's like you're learning through like not putting someone's like emotional state at risk, and then being able to adapt to that in the future, which is like such a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Yeah, totally. And it's like it's safer to do it with an AI. Like I can try saying something that I think might be wrong and then get the feedback, as opposed to putting a human through that.
Yeah, that sounds it sounds like it could be an awful experience. It could be great, but it could also be like an awful experience for both people, and then that might deter someone from continuing in their job or their role or whatever it may be. And in the process, we offend an innocent individual that just is dealing with someone new and trying.
Yeah. The other thing, I know we have to end, but just there's just to put like an emphasis on the sort of like acute problem that we're solving for. There's such high turnover and such such huge vacancies in the behavioral and mental health workforce that some people come onto the job as like a care provider, and within 3 weeks are promoted to supervisor because there's such high turnover. So sometimes the supervisors themselves like really are under equipped to be training other people. So just to like the workforce shortage is so acute and it's really real, and it's really a crisis. So we're coming in and trying to build some support where there's often like zero training happening.
Yeah, that is scary. I mean, like, even if it is, I'm sure it must be really helpful though to, even if you are like pushed into that role, obviously this is a bigger problem than just, you know, like we whatever. But to be able to get into that role so quickly, but to be able to have a training for it would be so like helpful and wonderful to be able to adjust to something so fast. And even if it may not be ideal to be able to be put in that position so fast, at least if you have some tools that are able to help you, like you might actually do well in that role, even if that's something that ends up happening.
Yeah, for sure. Because people come into this role and into this industry really wanting to help. And so to help set up people for success is really our goal.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And we do have to end, but I really appreciated this conversation. This was so eye-opening and really new to me, so it was really exciting to learn about. So thank you so much for sharing.
It's so great to talk about it. Thank you for your interest. It's really, I always learn more about it through sharing and talking about it too. So thank you for the conversation.
That's what we're here. We're here for you to talk about what you're passionate about. If you get to learn from this podcast too, that's great. My favorite part is learning from it. So I really appreciate it. And this was, again, very new for me. So I really enjoyed it. And that's like my favorite part. I do get to talk to people that do very similar things sometimes, and I still get to learn from them. But this was really new and exciting. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for watching or listening. We'd be nothing without you. So please watch other episodes and get to learn like I get to every time. And thank you so much. Have a lovely day, everyone.